Starscream here, and I am the Lord and Master of the Geekcast Radio Network. Don't tell Megatron.
Hello and welcome to episode 79 of the Cinema Geeks. I am one of your geeks, Optimus Solo, and joining me once again is Movie Revolt Dan. Hello.
Hey, how's it going?
Not too shabby. And Hard Candy Mandy. Hello.
Hey.
Hey. Short and sweet. Right to the point.
Yes, sir.
All right, and it is episode 79, and we are finally looking ahead now. First episode kind of focusing more on the films of 2016, turning the page on 2015. So the way we're going to do that today is we're going to be looking at the box office. Like we have done for the last couple of years, we're going to be making some crazy box office predictions. So let's take a look back first at what happened last year when we did this. So last year we had Dan, myself, and Fridley Sent who made our predictions, and we decided to expand it from 10 to 15 last year. Let's first look at the actual results, and then we can kind of go over our list a little bit, Dan. But the actual results as of this record, Star Wars The Force Awakens obviously finished the box office at number 1. The surprise, I guess, of the year for us was Jurassic World coming in at number 2, Avengers Age of Ultron 3, Inside Out 4, then Furious 7, Minions, Hunger Games Mockingjay all the way down at 7, The Martian, Cinderella, Spectre all the way down at 10, Mission Impossible 5, Pitch Perfect 2 at 12, Ant-Man, Home, and Hotel Transylvania was the actual box office, at least when I checked yesterday. I hope they didn't change between then and now. Dan, where did we get it right and where did we go wrong?
Well, I got to give Fridley Sent some praise because he was the only one that ranked The Martian and Hotel Transylvania. None of us.
That was pretty impressive.
Yeah, he got those two because I did not expect that. Well, for me, I definitely got number 1 wrong. I, for some reason, was on a Marvel kick, and I thought Avengers, I don't know what I was thinking, and so I thought Avengers would be number 1, and I was very wrong. And also, yeah, like you mentioned, I had Jurassic World at 6, which was nowhere near it. So I can, I guess, just go down what I had, my predictions, what they were. There were Avengers, Star Wars. I had Spectre at 3. I thought it would kind of rival what Skyfall did, and obviously that didn't happen. Hunger Games, Minions, Jurassic World, Furious 7 I had at 7, Inside Out at 8, Tomorrowland at 9, The Good Dinosaur at 10, Ant-Man at 11, Mission Impossible at 12, Jungle Book, which didn't even come out last year, at 13, Ted 2 at 14, and 50 Shades of Grey at 15. So I had a few that didn't even show up. My worst one was probably, obviously, the Jungle Book not showing up, but also...
Which throws everything for a loop when I was trying to do my different number kind of grades on this, because I'm like, what do I grade that as? It didn't come out. But you had a bunch of them just about right on the nose, or not right on the nose, but you had 3 of them, or 4 of them within 1 spot. So you had Star Wars only missed by 1. You had Minions at 5 and it came in at 6. You had Mission Impossible at 12, it came in at 11. You had 50 Shades of Grey at 15, it came in at 16. So you had a bunch that were real close. Avengers, you were only off by 2. Furious 7, you were only off by 2. Ant-Man, you were only off by 2. So, I mean, the ones you got right were almost perfectly placed.
Yeah.
So
the ones I got wrong, I got really wrong. I mean, like Ted 2 was probably my worst. I had it at 14. It received 36, and Tomorrowland was 30. So... both of those were pretty big disappointments. So
you didn't have nearly the disappointments that Matt and myself had, though. And I will say, though, if you take our top 8 or top 9, we're good, because Matt's top 9 were all listed in the top 15. Your top 8 and my top 8 were all in the top 15. So we just struggled with those final 6 or 7 spots, kind of trying to figure it out. But like you said, Matt was the only one that had The Martian and the only one that had Hotel Transylvania. None of us, of course, had Pitch Perfect 2, and none of us had Home, the other animated film, sneaking in there, which obviously happened. So, and then...
Which was my shit, by the way.
What's that?
Home?
Yeah. So you would have had that. You would have probably had that on there. And I was the only one that had Cinderella in the top 15. So those are kind of the more rare ones. For my 15, it was Star Wars number 1, Avengers, again, Hunger Games at number 3, guess I overshot that one. Minions at 4, Spectre 5, Jurassic World 6, Inside Out 7, then Furious 7. Then I had Mad Max Fury Road actually at 9, Mission Impossible 5 at 10, Bridges 5 at 11, Cinderella 12, Fantastic 4 at 13. Yikes. Insurgent 14 and Ant-Man 15. My big errors there was, well, my biggest error was obviously Fantastic Four. I had it at 13 and it came in at 51. So not too good there. Bridge of Spies also I had it at 11 and it came in at 42. So yeah, when I missed big, it was real big. So I did a couple different mathematical things here to try to see how we could crown an actual winner here, and I think no matter which way I slice it, Dan, you're gonna take the crown here, even with the one that didn't actually come out. And the way I tried to figure it out, because at first I took the number, like how many spots different it was than the actual pick. And if you took the total number of differences, I had 104. Matt had 185. You only had 72, obviously not counting one. So then I just took the average of that. And Matt's average would have been 19, my average would have been 10, your average would have been 8. So that kind of takes into effect for the one not being there. And then every other way I tried to do it, you win. So,
well, I think you won the last year, so there you go.
Right. So we can each take one crown. But did we learn anything from last year, Dan? Or what were the biggest surprises or disappointments overall? I mean, we're talking about relative disappointments here. We're not talking about like Pan was a disaster, that type of thing. Not
to underestimate animation, but also not knowing like where it's going to come. Like I figured there'd be I'd not expect Home and Hotel Transylvania 2 to outperform a Pixar film with The Good Dinosaur, which I had. Also, looking at one thing I considered when I did my new one was that downward trends. If a franchise is starting to kind of go backwards, a good chance it's not going to show up again. I should have considered that with the Hunger Games, because every other movie was kind of going backwards. It wasn't making as much, but I just thought, it's the last one and probably it'll bounce back. But it seems to rarely happen, so that's one thing I considered when making this other list.
Well, another question for you, because obviously everybody had Avengers at number 1 or number 2, and it clearly finished at number 3. We're going into a year with a slew of comic book films, and I know kind of our thought process going into this was a lot of times, to give them the benefit of the doubt that they're going to be making a lot of money. Avengers not being number 1 or number 2 at the box office, does that change your outlook at the 6, 7, 8 comic book films we got coming out in 2016?
It did, actually, and we can get to that, but I was a little wondering, like, are we seeing that superhero fatigue? It did and it didn't, I should say. It made me wonder, like, is the Marvel dynasty starting to kind of go down a little bit, even, still making like $500,000, but still so that did kind of factor out into my into my final rankings.
Right. And I think another thing too is, luckily we don't put numbers next to these in our predictions, but I definitely did not predict the numbers that Star Wars and Jurassic World was going to put up. I wouldn't have had either of those in the $600 or $800 million range domestically. Avengers being at $459 million or whatever it's at right now, most years would have been number 1. So It's not like it did bad.
Yeah.
We didn't have to put a number to these, because I totally did.
Oh, well then you're ahead of the game.
Jesus.
I mean, when you think about it, if we talked about it, I think last episode, but if Fast and Furious made more money than anything the year prior, so even though the Avengers wasn't a top film, it still made tons of money. So.
Yeah, and that's a good point. The top 5 films this year made more than any film last year. So it was a good year at the box office. I mean, we looked at 6 films that made over 300 million, and the kind of rule continues because we had 9 films that made 200 or more. It's always around 9 or 10, and Spectre is literally inches or centimeters away from crossing that 200 million mark. So it seems like it's right around there every year, 9, 10, something like that are going to make over 200 million. My other question, Dan, was, does the surprise effect of how much Jurassic World made, does that weigh into your mind when it comes to any type of reboot or any type of like nostalgic franchise from the past coming back? Are you going to give more credence to those now going forward, or do you think it takes a special case like maybe with Jurassic World?
It's such an enigma with Jurassic World, but I did think maybe, we had the resurgence of all the 80s properties last decade, and maybe we're starting to see the 90s kind of pop up here. So that did kind of come into my final tally. I'm thinking maybe that, I should not underestimate those franchises from the 90s that are coming back. So that did impact me. So I was also a little worried, like, not to take it, like, I think that was also part of an enigma, because if you look back, there was not much competition at the time, and it's such a weird thing, but...
Yeah, definitely a lot of stuff to consider. Also, like you said, having, what do we have, 4 animated films in the top 15, and we knew, you always know you're going to have a few, but I don't know if any of us expected there to be 4, so there's a bunch of animated films coming out this year, too, so that could be interesting. Amanda, you obviously didn't take part in the last couple. This is your first venture into the box office predictions. I know you're not a huge nerd when it comes to box office numbers, and that's not really something that might be not that it's important, but it might not be something you think about. So when you were going to try to tackle this list for the first time, to come up with your predictions and show Dan and I how it's done, what was going through your head, and what kind of things were you considering as you made your list this year?
Well, apparently I was a lot harder on myself than I thought. I was terrified because I thought we're supposed to put numbers backing these. So I was going in like, okay, what is this movie going to do? And then based on what I thought it was going to do with the numbers that you have from past movies, related stuff, all that good jazz, I came up with a number, and then based on that number that I thought that they were going to make, that's how I kind of ranked it. So. And
on a scale of 1 to 10, how confident are you in your list?
Jesus, I'm not confident, really. I think my list is mostly what I think is going to be. I think it's just a little popularity contest on my list right there, as far as.
Well, I think that leads to one thing. You can't underestimate the buzz or the hype that goes behind a film, and I think that's. Dan, we've talked about different things that we've considered in the past. We look back at what other films of the franchise did, or I know you and I before have tried to kind of match it with something like a similar type film, even if it's not for those films that aren't in a franchise or aren't, the second, third, or the reboots. We try to like match it up with something that's somewhat comparable. So we try to do those compares. I know at times we've looked at what time of the year it's coming out or what kind of competition it's against. You just talked about, the upward or the downward trend within a franchise. And I think buzz and hype is something we haven't gone into as much maybe before. But what other things were you using this year? Did you go with any of those standard things that we had talked about before, or what kind of mix did you use this year?
Well, I feel like this year's kind of weird because looking at the list, there were like a lot of movies. I'm like, this could be one of the biggest movies of the year. It could be one of the like huge gigantic flops. There's a lot of like interesting films coming out, and so I did consider franchises. So I try to go with ones I feel like I had the most history, or there's a lot of continuous franchises as you would expect. And I did consider studios, because I do seem like certain studios seem to be doing better. And I didn't consider that nearly as much as last time. And also went through and like how many animated films tend to make it. And so I went through 2010 to 2015. And on average, it's about 3.5 films. At the most 5 in 2010, at the least 2 in 2011. So, and this year, I don't know. I feel like there's like a trillion animated movies coming out. There's so many. But I also feel there's a lot of movies coming out that I've heard nothing about. Like big name directors with big name movies that I've heard nothing about at all. So yeah, I don't know. I didn't try to consider buzz too much because there's a few films I think that have a lot of internet buzz, but I'm curious if they're actually going to do that well. Like
there actually was. I found I don't know if it was on Twitter or a website when I was trying to look up some more like facts from the past and whatnot. But somebody had like a buzz meter, and it was strictly about the comic book films coming out this year, and it had how many Twitter mentions, I guess, maybe, or Facebook things for like when the trailer came out or when anything comes out, like news about it, and it was like a pie graph of which ones are getting the most buzz. It was really kind of interesting to look at to see which of those comic book films might be getting more internet buzz, but does that translate into the theater tickets being purchased? It's always hard to say. Now, you talked about animated films. There is this isn't counting all of them because there are some more like minor ones that not much is known about or probably won't have much pull, but there's easily like 8 or 9 animated films, like you said, that could be really good and could get a ton of hype about them and could be totally terrible. So it definitely is hard. You know, you look at your comic book films and we easily have 6 to 7 major comic book films. I don't know what people consider Gambit, is that major or not, but outside of that one, there's 6 for sure big comic book films. And then if you just look at like franchise stuff, there's easily 10 to 15 films coming out there that are connected to some type of franchise that has had success in the past. And then we have, you know, the unknowns this year because there's a plethora of video game type films that are trying to finally break through where no other video game film seems to have been able to do before. There's some films kind of more kid-friendly, kid-oriented, family-friendly, whether it's Disney or different things, you know, based on old films. And it's just hard to gauge it. I think when I went to make my list, the one thing I kind of want to put out there, you know, usually you have some type of actual, you know, your American Sniper, maybe like you could consider The Martian from this year, or something that is also, you know, somewhat of a serious movie or a dramatic movie or something that's going to get critical acclaim. I honestly can say I didn't consider many of those this year. I'm not saying that they're not going to happen, but it would have been way too hard for me to pick which ones. So I guess I somewhat played it safe to try to pick more along the lines of franchise comic book films, animated films, or something that I felt like had some type of connection to it that I could kind of feel out more. It's a hard year with that many things coming out to pick too many of the actual serious dramatic films. Maybe I'm alone in that, but I'm not going to have many on my list. I'll admit that right off. Amanda, anything else that you wanted to consider or wanted to throw out there that you gave more credit to or less?
There's definitely some things on here that I just want to see do well.
You're trying to will it?
Yeah.
All right. Well, if everybody said their piece, then I think it's time to start revealing the picks. We're doing 15 again this year. So let's see where we go. Amanda, what is your number 15?
Why do I have to start?
Ladies first.
Oh, shenanigans. Well, I had to get a Tammy pick in, so my number 15 is going to be Ghostbusters. I'm hoping that there's enough nostalgia behind this that's going to bring some people back, of the lovers of the original ones, and maybe some people looking to introduce their kids to it or anything like that, just kind of along those same lines as Jurassic World did.
All right. Ghostbusters is your number 15. I'll bounce off that and go next then because it's my number 15 too. It's coming out July 15th, and it's not going to see much competition. There is not much coming out in August, September, October. So I actually gave a little bit more credence to anything that was coming out mid to late July because I think it might have a chance to have some legs and stick around. Also think, you know, sometimes you do see that more comedic take, plus it does have the nostalgic thing going for it. And I didn't realize how much the first Ghostbusters made. Until I started looking up, it made $242 million. And I know the second one didn't make quite that, but I don't know. I think the combination of when it's coming out, having some comedy in there, and being connected to another franchise was just enough for me to slip it. And there was 5 films that I really wanted to kind of put in that spot, but it ended up being with Ghostbusters. So I'm with you on that one. Dan, where are you going for number 15?
I'm going a different direction for number 15. And then we talked about franchises, and I did want to get one movie. There's always, you did mention that one film that kind of comes out of nowhere. So I don't know if this is coming out of nowhere because it's coming from a really well-known director, but it's Steven Spielberg, and it's honestly a movie I didn't even hear of until I started making this list, and it's The BFG. It's based on a Roald Dahl book, and I know, so that has some pull there. It's, you know, it's Steven Spielberg kind of going back to this kind of a kids movie genre, like with E.T., so there's, you know, obviously a huge track record there. So I was thinking, if I was going to put out a risk, I'd do it with the 15 pick. So this is, like, again, one of those that could do really poorly. I'm thinking of something like Earth to Echo, which was like a ripoff of E.T. and did nothing. But, this is actually Spielberg doing it with a noted author from the source material, so I think it has a better shot. And, seems like it'll be somewhat family-friendly, which will be have not that much competition, leave live action-wise during the summer, so that's why I put it at 15.
I really hope you're right on this one. This is definitely one that I was considering. I just wasn't sure how to judge it. I've been keeping up a little bit with this one because I had Spielberg on my fantasy team. He was my director, so every time casting or things like that came out, I was always kind of keeping track of it. But yeah, I hope it does capture some of that E.T. magic, and that's why I kind of had it in my final. I think I had it in my final 30 or so to narrow it down. And it's hard to gauge, but I think that's a good pick. I think it could be a sleeper out there. It comes out July 1st. So again, if it is able to survive July, it could stick around because there's not a lot of competition coming right after that. So, all right, Amanda, number 14.
This one kind of pains me a little bit to put it this low, but just going off of the decline of the franchise, I would say I've got X-Men Apocalypse at my number 14.
All right, X-Men Apocalypse. This is the first comic book film. Obviously, we don't know how many are going to be on your list, but why do you feel like it's going to slide a little bit down to the 14th spot?
Just seeing how it's kind of on the decline as far as what it's been making, and I think that there's a ton of stuff coming out that might overshadow it this year.
It definitely is going to have some competition. It's coming out May 27th, the same weekend as Alice Through the Looking Glass, and only about 20 days removed or 3 weeks removed from Captain America Civil War. It's May and June are loaded this year, so you're right, it is going to have a lot of competition, and it's going to be interesting to see which ones survive that bloodbath in the summer this year. So, all right, your X-Men Apocalypse pick at number 14. For my number 14, I'm going to go ahead and throw my first of my animated picks. And this is a really hard one this year because outside of maybe one, there's not a lot to judge these on or to try to compare them to. My first one I'm going to go with is going to be Life of Pets. And I can't even really quantify why I'm putting that at number 14.
I think the kids are going to geek out about that. I think it looks pretty cute.
Yeah, I think so too. I think it's from the same studio, if I remember it, it's from the same studio that did Despicable Me. So, obviously Despicable Me had a lot of success. I'm not going to say it's going to have... there's been other films from that studio that have not had as much success. But, again, it's another July release, so I guess my list so far is all about July. Ice Age does come out a couple weeks after it, Ice Age 5, so it could have some competition there, which could hurt it. So maybe I'll regret that, but... I just think some kids and some parents and everybody are going to like The Life of Pets, so I'm going to go with that at my number 14. Dan, what do you got next?
My number 14 is actually one you just mentioned, and it's Alice Through the Looking Glass. And I know the first film made like $1 trillion, but I feel like this one is coming out almost like it didn't capitalize on it enough. So I have a feeling it's not going to do nearly as well as the original Alice in Wonderland, and also feel Alice in Wonderland is similar to like Avatar, where it did really well, but I don't know anyone who really loves that movie or talks about that movie. So I don't know if the sequel is going to nearly do as well as the original. So because of that, I put it at number 14.
I'm actually really sad I couldn't find a place for this on my list, but I do super love that movie. I had a lot of fun with it.
I've actually never seen it, so I can't really speak.
I have never seen it either.
What? Yeah, I had a...
This one's got a lot of big names attached to it, outside of the regular ones, I believe.
I think that the preview for Through the Looking Glass is super intriguing, and I'm really excited for the next installment.
All right. That means it's back to you, Amanda. What is your number 13?
This is another one that pains me a little bit to have this low, but I'm going to throw Gambit in here just above X-Men. Yeah, I've been waiting
Gambit
forever.
makes more than X-Men.
I think that people have been waiting so long for this, for it to finally come out, plus the name that's attached to it. I think that it's going to be a little bit more fresher than just another X-Men joint.
Interesting. I actually have Gambit at the bottom of the pack for all the comic book films. I haven't heard much positive
I didn't rank it because I thought I heard it was getting pushed to 2017, so I didn't want another Jungle Book on my hands. So I did not.
I was going to bring that up before. What kind of precautions can we take to avoid something that doesn't come out in 2016? And it also relates to my next pick too, which is the Jungle Book. So maybe it's not fair since you had it last year. Maybe I shouldn't be allowed to put it. But no, I think I love everything about this so far, and the trailers have been incredible. I think the cast that's attached to this is incredible, and I think it's one of those Disney live-action adaptations that's going to work. And I think it's going to work to the tune of $225 million, enough to put it in 13th on my list. So I will go with Jungle Book. Dan, what do you got next?
Next is my first animated film, and it's similar to you. Like, I know one's going to do really well, but the other ones I wasn't sure about. And this is where I go back to the idea of counting on studios. And when it comes to animation, what other studio are going to count on more than Disney? So I went with Zootopia. I feel a big reason why. I know its trailer was attached to Star Wars, or trailer, or what you even call it a trailer, was like a clip, and I think that's going to get a lot of buzz, a lot of interest. Considering how much money that made. I know every time, both times I saw Star Wars and I played, the crowd loved it. So I think that has some buzz to it. It's the Disney machine, so that's why I put Zootopia at 13. There's
got to be something said for at least knowing that everybody in the world has seen your trailer.
Yeah.
Or seen your clip. So, yeah, I think that's a wise pick as well. All right. Amanda, you've had 2 comic book films in a row with X-Men and Gambit. Are we getting a third?
No, I'm going to also pull out my first animated pick with Moana.
Is that how you say it? I wasn't sure. I was hoping someone else would have it.
I'm pretty sure that's how you say that.
So this is obviously the next Disney princess film, is how it's being billed.
Voiced by Shakira, I'm pretty sure is what's going on.
But more importantly, with a big Samoan guy named The Rock. Voicing the second in command or something like that.
I think the premise sounds super cool, and I'm ready for a new princess too, so I think it should be a good time.
I think it's a good pick. I think it's one of those that's, again, it's hard. The animated movies this year are probably harder than any other year, because in past years, when you have that big Pixar film, or you had something like Despicable Me, or anything that has like a franchise attached to it, it's going to do well. But there's a lot of kind of first films, and as far as we'll just look at the ones we've talked about: Life of Pets, Zootopia, and Moana. How do you predict which one of those is going to do better? So I think it's going to be interesting to see how the animated films stack up. For my next pick, I will go with my first of my comic book film movies, and it's actually going to be Deadpool, which is probably a dumb pick because it's rated R, and it's going to be harder to probably get the ticket sales of the PG comic book films, but it's coming out in February, which is a dead time of the year for films. People will finally be over probably the Star Wars thing and ready for something, kind of a little appetizer for Superman versus Batman. So I don't know. I know it's rated R, so it's probably a pretty risky pick, and I'm probably going to regret that. But I just think there's enough people. It's been, the marketing for this movie has been excellent. I don't know of a film that's been more strategically done, whether it's the little spots, the little commercials, the late night things, or the interviews, or the trailers. So I don't know. I'm hoping that the rated R thing doesn't hurt me, but I'm putting Deadpool at my number 12 pick.
Yeah. I didn't rank Deadpool, and I felt like it was similar to where I feel like this had a lot of internet buzz, but I kept relating it to something like Kick-Ass, where it's a movie that has a fan base, but it being an R rating, it just never made a great deal of money. So that's made me hesitant to rank it.
Yeah, it was one factor that I didn't think of strong enough, I think, to say, wait a second, this is rated R. I can't put this on my list. That should be a rule. Dan, where are you going next?
I'm going to my first comic book movie as well, and I'm going with Doctor Strange at number 12. I figured this would kind of fall along the same lines as Ant-Man or Thor, one of those Marvel movies that is kind of weird but strange when people go see it because it's a Marvel movie. So I put it at 12, and it does have Benedict Cumberbatch, who I don't know if necessarily he will sell tickets, but I know he does have somewhat of a fan base. But I didn't think it would crack the top 10, but I felt it would be comfortable around 11, 12, 13. So.
Yeah, I think this one does have a lot of positive buzz from the the early stuff that's been released, and does have some star power behind it. And it's kind of hard to rank some of these comic book films too. I know I'm a broken record because I said the same thing about the animated films, but when you look at Gambit, Doctor Strange, Deadpool, some of these, it's hard to weigh it out. But I think that one it's probably a better pick than what I just did. So. I'm regretting going with the rated R film already. Amanda, what do you got next?
For my number 11 pick is also one that hurts my feelings to put so low, but to be safe, I did. I've got Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them. I would like to say number 1 because I'm so excited to jump back in the Wizarding World of Harry Potter, but I just don't know with all of the big blockbusters and all the comic book movies that are coming out, if it can make enough to be up there with the big boys. I'm hoping that it's going to be a resurgence and people are really going to want to jump back in that because, I don't think anybody was okay with being done with what they're seeing with Harry Potter. And now with the passing of Professor Snape, maybe people will be more apt to jump back in.
I think it's coming out at a good time of the year, a November release. It's going to have basically the box office to itself at least for a month, until the other Star Wars film comes out. But I think there's going to be a lot of love for Fantastic Beasts, so I don't think that's foolish at all to put that one on your list.
And Eddie Redmayne, he's going to draw somebody in, right?
Somebody. I don't know what kind of draw he has, actually, so I have no idea. For my number 11, it's already been talked about. Dan, you had it at your number 13, I believe, so I will go with Zootopia at this point. I do think it'll make a little bit more than Life of Pets. I think the Disney name and the trailer being attached to the Star Wars The Force Awakens is going to help. So I think it's going to be enough to be right around that top 10. I don't have it quite breaking in, but I do have it at the number 11 spot.
You're not seeming very confident with your picks, Kevin. You asked me how confident I was, and you're sitting here
I thought I was,
and
now I'm like looking back at my list and saying, well, that was dumb, or that was wrong. And hopefully I'm just, you always go with your first guess, so.
You're being a worrywart.
All right, I'll stop that. Dan, what do you got next?
My number 11, I had a hard time ranking this one, because I feel like I'm just hearing negative things about it. I know there's a lot of negative things about the previous film, but it still made a lot of money, and I'm going with Star Trek Beyond for my number 11 pick. Into Darkness made the top 10 when it was in. The original, the first reboot did really well too. So I thought it might drop down a little bit compared to those two, but still make it in the top 15. So I put it at 11. I think it may annoy all the Trekkies, but I think those that want something a little bit different or enjoy the other two will probably come in and watch it. So I had it at number 11.
I'm one of those people who enjoyed the other two, and I'm looking forward to this. I put this as my number 19 pick, but I'm definitely hoping to be proven wrong with that one, and I hope it does a little better than that.
All right. Excellent. So that means it's back to you, Miss Amanda, for the first now in the top 10.
One that's already been brought up, I've got Doctor Strange at my number 10.
I am feeling stupid. Sorry, continue.
It's
not on my list, so.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I got Doctor Strange. I think that it should be a cool property, and I'm hoping that it does well, and I hope that they do it some justice. And Benedict Cumberbatch, I mean, he's definitely dipped his toe in sci-fi, so hopefully those creepy Doctor Who fans and Sherlock Holmes fans will jump over and be on the Doctor Strange train.
You just alienated half of our audience, probably.
Why?
You called them creepy.
Huh?
You said creepy Doctor Who fans.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's half the audience. I don't know.
All right, so Doctor Strange at your number 10 spot. My number 10 has also already been talked about by you, Amanda. For my number 10, I am going to go with X-Men Apocalypse. I have this as the first film, actually going past the 250 million mark. I think, regardless of people's reactions to the visuals of this character or that character, I think you gotta go back to the fact that X-Men First Class and Days of Future Past have been super well received. I know the X-Men franchise overall doesn't quite draw as much as like a Spider-Man or Batman or Superman, etc. But I don't know.
Which I'm sad about. I love me some mutants.
And I think this is everyone's been been along for the ride for those first two films, and I think this is somewhat of a expecting of some type of climactic event here, and I think it's a
apocalypse.
Right, and it's a good story from Dan. Are you familiar with the story that Apocalypse?
The Age of Apocalypse is not at all kind of like what they're doing. Like it's similar. Okay. Age of Apocalypse has to do with time travel and alternate dimensions and all that type of stuff. So, but I do really like the Apocalypse character. But actually, I didn't rank it within my top 15. I think a big reason why was because it doesn't have Hugh Jackman. It doesn't have any of the original cast going back. And I was hearing from a lot of people that weren't, or just felt it looked really weird, and just like general fans, not necessarily like comic book fans. So I was wondering if it wouldn't have that same impact. And without that original cast, the First Class did okay. It didn't do great. So that made me hesitant to rank it. So I thought it might get a little bit of a dip there.
All right. I'm finding myself on an island with some of these picks, but yeah, I think you're onto a couple things there, because like I said, the franchise doesn't. If you feel like it has more of a presence, and maybe it's just internet buzz and the circles that we run around that are all familiar with X-Men, etc. But for some reason, that franchise does not quite translate the way some of the other ones do in the comic book world. So it might not be in the top 10 or the top 15. We'll have to wait and see. What do you have as your first pick in the top 10, Dan?
I do have another comic book movie, and it's also one that I actually didn't even have ranked, and then I saw its trailer, and it kind of won me over. I'm thinking, this actually might be pretty good, and it might have like a Guardian situation coming out, and that's Suicide Squad. I have it at number 10. Obviously with its trailer that came out using Bohemian Rhapsody, clearly they're trying to use that the same way that Guardians did, but I think it actually looks pretty good, and I think it might actually do pretty well. So I felt, it might make it all the way up to the top 10.
Yeah, I think there is definitely a lot of positive vibe and buzz around Suicide Squad so far, so I think that's a good pick as well. Amanda, number 9.
My first video game pick, Assassin's Creed, coming at number 9. I think there's enough backing with as many games as there are. There's definitely a following there, and I think with Warcraft coming out the same year, people are going to be in the mood for some video game movies here.
Also coming out right at the end of the year, December 21st, for Assassin's Creed. Definitely has the star power. I don't know how much that star...
Fassbender effect, that's all it needs.
I don't know how much effect Fassbender has on like the box office, so to speak, but... or if it's just more of a movie critic or movie podcasters or whatever you want to call our circles that love him so much. But I'm so scared to rank any video game film. So I did not rank Assassin's Creed. It would have been in my top 20 probably, but I just don't know if any of them will be able to bust through in that way. I think it looks cool, and I'm excited for it, but I'm just not sure how much money it's going to make. So it scared me away on that one.
Well, you can eat my dust when it comes in the top 10.
I hope it does. I hope it is the most successful video game movie of the year.
I don't.
All right. For my number 9, I'm going to go back to the world of animation for my third animated pick, I guess, and that is Finding Dory. I know a lot of people might have this higher. It's so far removed from Finding Nemo, I don't know how much of an effect that will have. I know a lot of people are putting it top 5 material. I just don't know where to go with it. I think it has the potential to make 300 to 350 million, or it could be way less than that. It just kind of depends if it finds that audience. It's coming out in the middle of June, so there's a lot of stuff. Life of Pets comes out less than a month later. Ice Age comes out right after that. So I don't know how it'll fare, but I think that there is going to be that nostalgic buzz to it, so I think it's going to be at least top 10 worthy. So I got Finding Dory at number 9.
I think I was the oldest person in the theater for Finding Nemo when that came out.
I didn't see that in the theater, so I saw that on DVD or something at some point.
Nobody cares.
Okay, Dan, what do you got next?
Number 9, I'm actually going to one of my personal favorite franchises, even though I kind of wish this movie isn't happening, but hey, hopefully it'll be good. And that's Bourne 5. I guess it doesn't have an official title yet, but it'll probably be Bourne something. The Bourne Ultimatum did amazingly well. It was in the top 10 when it came out. I know the last Bourne film with Jeremy Renner did not do very well, but obviously that did not have Matt Damon. So, Matt Damon effect last year, he made The Martian a top 10 film going back to the Bourne franchise, which I know a lot of people love. So it caused me to put it at number 9.
Yeah, I didn't think of the Matt Damon effect with The Martian, but I had Bourne as one of those I was strongly considering. I just, I wasn't sure if it would be something that was like a downward effect. You see the other one kind of dropping, and it continues to drop, or is Matt Damon coming back enough to just catapult it right back to how it was doing prior?
I felt like the Identity and Supremacy and Ultimatum, they were all kind of going up, so I felt like that would continue, where, whatever it was, Bourne Legacy was more of a movie we'll just move on and forget about.
That was just that side movie. Yeah. That was like X-Men Origins or Wolverine.
Exactly.
All right, so the Bourne franchise cracking the top 10. Amanda, what do you have next?
My love of 90s, anything 90s, might be the reason I have this so high, but I also have high hopes for this. I've got Independence Day Resurgence at number 8, and it did make hella money when it came out.
It did.
And
hella money.
Bro. And I think that the trailer looks super awesome. It's also got that nostalgia factor coming in. I mean, who doesn't get the chills when President is giving that 4th of July speech? And, I mean, those aliens, those are some legit aliens. They're no joke. And, Will Smith, as far as what I'm seeing, and Jeff Goldblum. So, hey, I think it's...
So no Will Smith, no problem at the box office?
Should be a good equation for some money at the box office.
Do you think Will Smith doesn't factor in there and being missing from the film?
I don't think it can hurt him staying away from it, no.
Oh, so you're going with more of like an After-Earth effect for Will Smith.
Yes, yeah. I'm just not feeling his star power lately, so stay away from it, Will Smith. Don't ruin this for me, buddy.
Yeah, Independence Day was definitely when I was considering it. It was probably like my number 16 pick. Because, that first one did real well. It's hard to predict. Is it going to be something like we had with Jurassic World? It's one of those that you got to consider in that same vein, or
is Amanda crazy? I don't know.
Is Amanda crazy? That's the question.
I ask myself that daily.
I might be crazier, so there you go.
All right, nice.
You have a higher chance. Come on now.
He's not going to reveal that. For my number 8. I'm going to go with one that's also already been mentioned just a second ago by Dan, and that is Suicide Squad. I think this one might get some legs and some people that are... I think it'll get good initial reviews maybe, and then that'll power it through to have a longer theater life. Also kind of probably going back to giving a lot of credit for something that's coming out in August, and it has little to no competition whatsoever, unless you're going to consider like whatever horror films they throw out in October 2 months later to be some competition. But the only other August film that's really coming out is Pete's Dragon, and I don't think that's really the same crowd that's going to go see Suicide Squad. So I think if it does well, if it has initial reviews that are positive, then it has the potential to be, a steady top 3, top 5 at the box office for at least a month or two. So I'm going to go with more of the scheduling on that one and put Suicide Squad at my number 8. Dan, what do you got?
My number 8 is also one that's already been talked about, and it's The Jungle Book. I think I've really thought the trailers looked really quite good. Cinderella did really well. Oz, Great and Powerful did really well, and I kind of consider them around the same vein. Maleficent as well, like these kind of live action cartoons coming, or these cartoons coming to live action. Jon Favreau, I have a lot of faith in him for the most part. So because of that, I mean, the cast is pretty crazy. Bill Murray, Idris Elba, Scarlett Johansson with doing the voice talent. So I think it has a lot of legs, and I don't think I'd put it as high, but I think this year the box office is going to get it a little bit not as high. The movies are going to make less, but rank higher, so that would cause me to... I thought it would make around the same as Cinderella, which would probably put it around 8.
You're just trying to make up for not being on your list last year, or not coming out when it's on your list last
year.
I
had to put it again. I could have not put it.
I was going to ask if you were worried by putting it twice in a row.
If it pushed back,
It's going to be your fault then. You jinxed it then. I'm going to blame you.
I think with one thing for Jungle Book that it might benefit is more of a, in a year where there's going to be a lot of films in the same genre or in the same type of feel, I think it might be different enough that it's going to be a welcome film. I mean, I know it's coming out early. It's an April release, but I don't know. Maybe people will be ready for something different before they get ready to.
And that's around the time when Oz the Great and Powerful came out, and that did really well. So I figured it might be along the same lines.
Excellent. All right, Amanda, that means you're up next for your number 7.
This one, I think, surprised me. I had this a lot higher in my initial run down the list, and I've got Captain America Civil War at number 7. I think that The Winter Soldier was super awesome, and I think people are still kind of riding the high for that one from Captain America, but as far as how Avengers 2 did, I'm a little scared for it, so I had to put it down a little lower.
I will reserve my thoughts on that one.
Your face.
All right. For my number 7, it's also already been talked about by Dan. Apparently I have this, that's why I was saying I was scared earlier, because there was like 2 or 3 movies that somebody mentioned like towards the 15 end, and then the other person said it's not even on their list, and I'm looking at my list like, shoot, I have that really high. My number 7 is Alice Through the Looking Glass. Maybe I'm just being a fool because of how well the first one did, but I don't know, it's hard. I even projected it at way less than the first one, and I still think it has enough to make it here. I think, like Dan said, there's going to be a lot more movies that are making not necessarily a gazillion dollars, but it's going to be spread out amongst a bunch of them. And I think Alice Through the Looking Glass might have a big enough chunk of the apple there, or the piece of the pie, that it's going to at least creep into the top 10. So I have it at number 7.
I actually feel like people's spending power has gone up. I feel like we saw this huge amount of money flow into the box office for one film, and I think there's going to be a ton of stuff out there stuff that's coming out that people are really excited to see, and it's in the same kind of vein almost, as far as what people are excited to see is what they've been waiting for. So we know that all this anticipation is there, and I feel like that we're going to put a bunch of money into the box office this year. I don't think there's going to be some low rankers as far as money goes. I think that we're going to hit some big stuff.
I don't think we're going to hit as big as Star Wars, though.
Maybe. We got another Star Wars coming out. People are riding that high.
True that. All right, Dan, what do you got at number 7?
My number 7 is also another one that's been mentioned. I'm maybe worried I ranked this a little too high, but I put Ghostbusters at number 7. It has that name recognition for sure. Melissa McCarthy, say what you will, but she does do well in the box office when she teams up with Paul Feig, who, Spy did well last year, The Heat did well, Bridesmaids did super well, and I'm thinking this might kind of come in line with Bridesmaids, which was one of the biggest movies of the year. You add in the fact that it has that franchise name, has a pretty good cast, so as long as it's not horrible, I have a feeling it's going to do well. So I might be ranking a little too high, thinking that it's going to cash in on the Ghostbusters name of the past, but it had me ranking it at number 7.
All right, so all of us having Ghostbusters on the list. Amanda, number 6.
You guys talking about not having this on, maybe having this a little too high, is getting me a little worried. I've got Deadpool at number 6. I think there's a ton of buzz around it. I think he is continuing to market this still, and it comes out in just a couple weeks. I just saw something today where it was like National Australia Day, and he was doing something like that. I got tagged in on Facebook, and I think that they've done such an awesome job at like making Deadpool real to people. It's like he's an actual person, and he's doing all this publicity stuff for himself, and I think that the buzz is going to pay off, and we've been waiting for an R-rated comic book like this, I think, so I'm ready for it.
That's the only reason I hope it does good, because I hope it doesn't scare people away from doing that type of stuff.
I mean, it fits. There's no other way you can put this movie out without being that. So I don't think there's anything wrong with the rating.
And my putting on the list was more hoping that people would just latch onto the first film worth seeing, maybe in 2016. It's like, after they sift through January, and then it's finally like, oh, here's Deadpool. So I'm hoping it gets a big plunge right at the beginning. So, all right. For my number 6, I guess I was trying to strike the well a bunch of times on this one. I'm going back to the world of animation, and I will go with that Moana pick now at my number 6, so it's going to be the highest one I rank, ahead of Finding Dory, ahead of Zootopia, and ahead of Life of Pets. And the main reason, it's coming out late November. It's a Disney princess film, and the last time those two things were said about something, it ended up doing pretty well. So Frozen did pretty well in a very similar time of release. And I'm hoping that this one can do just as well. I mean, I know nothing about the film. I have no vested interest whether it does well or does not, but I'm thinking it's the right time. We've seen it before. Maybe it has that Christmas buzz going through it and all the way into the new year, so maybe it's going to be enough to power it all the way up to number 6. So that's what I'm going with my number 6 pick. Dan?
I feel really dumb because I did not even rank that one, so I feel I don't know. I just something about it. I'm just like, I don't know.
It could be The Good Dinosaur.
Yeah. So I didn't feel confident enough, but I don't know. I could totally be wrong because I didn't even think of the Frozen connection, but that makes so much sense now. So yeah, darn it.
It's like everything you two have said this whole time hasn't made sense to me.
All right, number 6. I have a movie. I guess we'll stop saying this because I feel like every one movie I talked about will be talked about. You talked about the Wizarding World of Harry Potter, and I'm going there as well for my number 6 with Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them. Again, it's hard to... I kind of relate this to something like The Hobbit, which is in the same realm as Lord of the Rings. I know this is different because it's not necessarily a prequel. It's within the same universe, but I think just that will be enough to get people interested because it's been such a long time since we've had a Harry Potter movie, and I know that franchise has only kind of gotten bigger as it's gone by. So it made me think that it would, and all those movies did super well. So I thought it would do well as well. So I put it at number 6.
Time for the top 5. Amanda, where do we start?
This is going to be my last animated pick. I didn't have as many as you guys did. I just thought that these other films were going to, blow the box office out of the water and make a ton more money. But I've got Finding Dory. And I think that I've heard a ton of buzz of, even before this film was confirmed, that everybody wanted a Dory movie, and now they're getting that. And I think that parents who saw this are going to take their kids and get them involved. I think even most kids who weren't around when that movie came out, they have seen that movie because their parents have shown them. It's kind of a staple now, and I think that even though it's kind of far removed from the original film, I think it's going to do awesome in the box office.
Obviously, I'm in agreement. I mean, I don't have it quite as high to you, but I had it number 9, so...
Obviously, I'm cooler than you because I put it higher, so
okay.
Just saying.
All right. Fair enough. All right. For my number 5 pick, I guess I'm a little higher than you guys were on this one, too. I have Star Trek Beyond at my number 5. I don't know. I just feel like the buzz and I feel like it's on the incline. I think if you project, kind of do a trajectory. I mean, I know a lot of people were down on Into Darkness, but I still feel like it's building, and I like what it's building to. And obviously, Idris Elba is in this, so I like the idea of him as a villain, and I want to see more about it. I think it's a cool concept, even though people are having a hard time with the trailer. I like what I've seen so far, but maybe I'm a fool, but I don't know. Star Trek Beyond, number 5.
I don't mind what's coming from. I just know that Trek, some of those hardcore Trekkies hate the fact that it looks like it might be fun. So,
well, and the other thing, and the other thing, people involved with the project, Simon Pegg, et cetera, said that trailer really has nothing to do with the actual feel of the film.
Yeah.
So just calm down, people.
Yeah.
You can have fun too. It's all right. So, Dan, what do you got at number 5?
Number 5 is one I feel like maybe I ranked way too high, but I guess I will call it my Jurassic World pick because I kind of my thought process when ranking it here, and that was Independence Day Resurgence. Yeah, it doesn't have Will Smith, which might be a benefit looking at his past box office, but like I said, I feel like we're in the world of the 90s again, and a huge amount of people, I think, have a lot of great nostalgic feelings for this, like they did Jurassic Park. So I think they're going to go into it with that, wanting to see that world again, seeing this movie. People have been asking for an Independence Day sequel forever. So because of that, I thought I'd do really well. The first one was one of the biggest hits of the 90s. So I don't know. I felt confident before I started this, but I put it at 5.
Yeah, I think that's one of those that if it has every ability to do that, and it's one of those if you get the buzz behind it and the positive reviews and stuff like that, it can easily do that. So I guess I was trying to make more safe picks this year, but I I feel like that could easily be this year's Jurassic World or something of that nature. So
I totally agree. I'm living in the 90s right now. I've got a beret on and I look like I belong in the Seattle grunge scene from the 90s, pretty sure. Yeah, I'm all
playing Oregon Trail. And, you know.
Straight out of Melrose Place or Beverly Hills 90210 or something here. All right. So on to our number 4 picks, Amanda.
Oh, shenanigans. I've got Suicide Squad at my number 4. I think that there is some really awesome names and super cool characters involved in this, and with everything that's been surrounding this and adding to the buzz for us TV, movies, all that jazz, I am ready for this. I want it to come out, like, so stoked, and I'm just hoping that everybody else is at the same level of excited as me and will give it their money.
All right, so a big vote of confidence for Suicide Squad from you.
Yes, sir.
All righty. My number 4 is going to be... I wouldn't have thought that I was going to rank this higher than the panel here, especially you, Amanda, but I will put Harry Potter, Fantastic Beasts, and Where to Find Them at my number 4. I thought for sure you would have this in your top, 3 or 4.
Dude, safe pick.
Man, I think it might have that same type of thing. We've seen it before where a franchise... not that there's a ton of franchises like this, but, we saw it this last year where Star Wars had been a thing and then had gone away for a while and then it comes back. I'm not saying it's going to have, I'm not trying to compare the two and what it's going to be able to do, but, we've been away from Harry Potter now for a handful of years, and maybe people are clamoring for that reappearance, and it's got some names to it, so... I don't know. Maybe it'll have enough. I think you can't underestimate the Harry Potter films. I mean, if any franchise that has 8 films and none of them have been below, what's the lowest one was 249 million? So, I don't know. That says it's probably going to be in that ballpark. So, I have it all the way up here at number 4. I'm just surprised I had it the highest. Amanda? Comment?
I think you're a poopy face.
All right.
Don't try to out-pick my Harry Potter. You know that I was going to have it high up, or you thought, and I surprised you there, didn't I?
You did. All right, so I'm the highest one on Fantastic Beasts. Dan, what do you have at number 4?
Number 4, I actually thought I might be the lowest to rank this, but I think Amanda already ranked it a little lower, and that's Avengers 3, also known as Captain America Civil War. I wasn't sure where to put this, but I felt like, Avengers had a little bit of... decline's a strong word, but it didn't do as well as people expected, or, it didn't best the previous Avengers, and there's going to be some more competition. And honestly, I think it's still going to do really well. I just think the movies that I have ahead of it are going to do better. So that's why I put it at number 4.
All right, Captain America off of 2 of our lists so far. That means, Amanda, it's your turn for number 3.
Oh, okay. I was a little torn about where to put this one, too, but it's Batman versus Superman. It's coming in right above Suicide Squad. I think it's going to be kind of around the same audience, but I think that people are going to be more diehard and ready for the Dawn of Justice going on here, whatever it is.
Does anyone know the title of this movie? All right, so Superman versus Batman at your number 3. And I'll just bounce off of that because it's my number 3 as well. I think this is one that could suffer if it gets bad reviews right away. I think there's a lot of people waiting for this to be bad. But also, it's got Superman and Batman, so maybe I'm an idiot for not putting it number 2 or number 1. But if any film out there is going to suffer from bad word of mouth, I think it could be this one. But it also is coming in a little bit earlier. It's got the spring release, so it's not necessarily trying to compete as much with, like when Captain America and X-Men are going toe-to-toe. So maybe I'm kind of not putting enough stock in the fact of the earlier release date. So
I think you're not putting enough stock in how many times Hyro and Barry are going to go see this movie and give it their money.
They're not going to, though, because they have the movie pass, so they're going to go see it once, and then they're going to lie and say they're going to see all these other junky movies, and then they're going to sneak back into it. So I'm safe on that front.
Bastard.
So, all right, 2 of us having it at number 3. Dan, are you also going to have it at number 3, or are you going somewhere else?
I'm going somewhere else, some place that you guys already went, and I'm going with Finding Dory at number 3. Finding Nemo was a gigantic hit, one of Pixar's biggest hits. And yeah, it's been a while, but I feel like it has had huge longing impact. Like, go to any aquarium, and you're going to have everyone looking for the Nemo fish. I mean, it's still, like, every kid knows Nemo. It's still that, and you have to say it, the Ellen DeGeneres factor. She's got her following. I mean, she's got her show.
Yeah.
It's basically free marketing every day until it comes out. And it, Pixar Inside Out did super well last time. And looking at something like Toy Story 3, like their other sequels, and Cars 2, which did well even for a movie that was panned. Hopefully, this one won't be. So because of that, I put it at 3. I just think it's gonna have so many kids who are just dying to see Nemo again in a new movie. So that's why I put it here.
Yeah. Well, also a little bit of what we were just talking about is, something that was around and then not that there was a bunch of Finding Nemo films, but kind of that resurgence of, hey, another chance to go into this world. So definitely could have a lot of power there behind it. I forgot about the marketing of Ellen. I'm feeling stupid now. So, all right, Amanda, you're number 2.
This
dun, dun, dun.
is probably my biggest nerd pick, and that is Warcraft. I think there's a ton of these people out there, not to alienate anybody, Kevin.
Those creepy Warcraft people.
Creepy Warcraft assholes.
Who are not the same people as the creepy Doctor Who people.
You're eliminating groups one by one, though, so that's nice.
Yeah, I do what I do.
Star Trek, the, Doctor Who people.
Doctor Who, right.
But I think that they're going to be super on board for this. I think that even people who really aren't into Warcraft are going to go see it just because it looks kind of like a cool film. And I think that hopefully the pirating factor doesn't come into play, and these people who are playing Warcraft are going to move away from their computer and not bootleg this thing and actually go to the flippin' theater to watch this. So we'll see.
If we hadn't alienated them yet, we took care of that there. I was way too afraid of this film being like one of the biggest bombs of the year that I just couldn't put down my list. I think it has equal potential to just be a complete disaster and make like a
Don't shit on my parade, Kevin.
What it's
Do not shit on my parade.
All right. I was not impressed with the trailer, so.
Whatever, I thought it looked legit, okay?
All right.
Save my people.
I guess I'm the highest one on my number 2 as well. And I feel like it's dumb because of the time it's coming out and because it's going against X-Men, but I will put Avengers 3 at my number 2 pick, just because I think a lot of people are intrigued about Captain America Civil War.
I was like, did I not see that on the fucking...
Dan already made the joke. It's not funny anymore.
I was confused. It didn't work on me.
But I think a lot of people are interested to see this happen, interested to see some of these characters. We've seen them squabble before and kind of argue with each other, but to see it kind of go where it goes. And I am trying to put my faith in the fact that there is a little-known character named Spider-Man that is supposed to make an appearance, and he has a hell of a lot of box office draw. So I'm hoping that Infusion can kind of boost it up into the number 2 spot. But again, it's coming out in the middle of the gauntlet of films in May and June. So maybe I'm dumb, but I feel like I should be judging this like an Avengers film, and I didn't learn from putting Avengers at number 2 last year, so I'm going to put this one at number 2 again and see what happens. But I'm hoping Spider-Man and the idea that we're going to have all these characters kind of fighting against each other, and maybe some intrigue from people that don't know this, different things, different comic stories that are just wanting to see what happens with this. So I got it number 2. Dan?
My number 2, I guess I'll be the first one to talk about this, and I went back and forth so many times, but I put Star Wars Rogue Nation at number 2, and I might be kicking myself as I put Star Wars number 2 last year in it, and I was very, very wrong. My only hesitation is that it's not like an episode film, so I wonder if that's gonna cause it to... It's the first time they're ever doing anything like this. It's still Star Wars, so it's hard to really to compare it to anything. So I still think it's going to do super well, but I just wonder if it's not going to get to the same level as, similar to, say, a Thor compared to an Avengers. It's not going to be the same thing here, where it's not, nearly as well received or not nearly as huge of a film compared to, the main movie. But I could be completely wrong. But that's why I put it at number 2.
It's definitely a possibility that it's not, one of the episode numbers, and as far as, where it's placed chronologically, might not have the same draw. But after this year, I refuse to bet against Star Wars in any way, shape, or form. So it will be my number one pick. I can just bounce off of that since we only have one spot left. But I think it's just going to continue to ride the high from Force Awakens, and people will still be ready for that next installment that soon, and they're going to be willing to shell out their money for it, especially in December. It's not going to have much competition in January or February, so it could have some long legs. It could be one of those that kind of not maybe right away like the Force Awakens, but over time has enough to kind of climb that list a little bit. So,
well, thanks for being fucking rude, because it was my turn and that was also my number one, and now I have nothing to say because you just said all of it. So, way to be that guy.
All right. So you're in agreement with me, so that should be good.
Until you took my turn, asshole.
Okay. My bad. So we're both with Rogue One, A Star Wars Story, at our number one, and that means, Dan, you're the only one left with a pick.
Yeah, so my number one, I went with Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice League, Return of the Vampire Hunter. Yeah, I don't even know.
I wish you could have kept going for like 2 or 3 more sentences. That would have been awesome.
Dark Knight Return, I don't even know. Yeah. Forever.
Forever. Just a pause, and then forever.
I feel like we've been talking about this movie since the internet existed. It's been around forever.
Savage, Dan. You're savage tonight.
And I just feel like, people are going to go out and see it out of obligation just because they've been talking about it for so long. But no, I think mainly because Dark Knight was huge, and Batman and Superman. I know there's been a lot of negative people, a lot of issues for people have been saying it, but at the end of the day, you have Batman and Superman, two of the biggest iconic characters of all time in the same film. And I remember when I Am Legend came out and they had that poster in the background and how much that cost. So this actually is happening. It's also coming out in a time where there's nothing else for such a long time, so it could really dominate for a great period. So I think that's really where it's going to kind of get its legs, where it's just making tons of money with nothing else going against it. So I think that's what had me put it at number one, was putting that all together. If there's anything that could beat Star Wars, it would be the combined force of the Dark Knight and the Man from Krypton. So I went back and forth a lot, but I figured, I would take a chance and go with this at number one.
If it doesn't, there will be memes aplenty.
If it's a failure, I can only imagine what that would be. I mean, I was a little worried because, Man of Steel didn't do very well. It did okay. Okay, but it was nothing near that of Dark Knight, and so that had me okay, maybe not, but I figure with Batman coming back into it, and Wonder Woman and every other person that's in it, so.
Hey, motherfuckers, bowing down to Superman. So maybe he's going to be on that God level, and you're going to come in and murder the box office.
I think the other thing you got to realize is every single person that's on this internet thing, and talking crap, or this internet thing that came about the same time that Batman versus Superman did. I think all those people that are upset and complaining or doing whatever, they're all going to go. They're all still going to go see it.
Exactly.
So how much is that really going to hurt it? And everybody, it combines two different fandoms. I mean, even though it's still a comic book film, you have all those people that are diehard Batman fans, and you have all those people that Superman's their favorite character, and they're all going to go see this. So I think I don't think you're that far off. It could easily be the number one. I think it's a little bit. It seems like it's harder this year because I know we kind of went back and forth between Avengers 2 and Star Wars last year, even if that turned out to be kind of foolish, I guess. But there's 3 or 4 films that could be number one this year. I mean, the combined forces of everybody that's involved with the Civil War, Batman versus Superman, a Star Wars film, a Harry Potter film, some of these animated films. I mean, I don't think that's that much of a runaway as far as what film's going to be number one. So, going back through a little bit, what films just missed your cut, Amanda? Which ones were just on the outside looking in?
Zootopia, Life of Pets, Jungle Book, Star Trek, and Alice the Looking Glass are my 16 through 20.
All right, the ones that just missed mine were Independence Day, Warcraft, like you talked about, Assassin's Creed, and 2 films that did not get mentioned at all that I'm interested to see how they do, even if they're probably one of them won't be a good movie. But Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2. I think it's easy to forget that still has some draw. You're going to have some Bebop and Rocksteady, I think, in this one. So you never know. That one could sneak into the top 15. And then the other one, I don't know. This isn't the official name, I don't think, but the sequel to Snow White and the Huntsman, the Huntsman film. I think there's going to be a lot of positive buzz behind that one. I think it's, one of those epic type films. I think there's some big names attached to it, so I wouldn't necessarily sleep on that one. It just couldn't quite make my list. It's also coming out in April, so it's gonna not have a lot of competition amongst it.
Well, I'm sad I couldn't have a Hemsworth like that on my list.
So those were the other ones that I was just thinking. I also very briefly thought about Inferno, the other Tom Hanks Da Vinci Code film. Passengers, if I was going to pick a serious, like, Martian type film, it's going to be a science fiction film with Chris Pratt and Jennifer Lawrence, and it's also coming out in December, so that could have some legs. So if I was going to put one of those in there, it would have been that one. I also considered the Bourne film and even Ice Age 5, but I thought there was way too many animated films to actually consider that one too strongly. Dan, what one just missed your cut?
Secret Lives of Pets was the one that was I went back and forth with that. And the BFG. The Conjuring 2 also. The first Conjuring was a huge, gigantic hit. The second one's coming out. And I wasn't sure. Like, horror films, though, are tough because they often don't really get in the top 15, even the really, really successful ones. They tend to make a lot of money, but mostly because they make a lot of profit because they're not very expensive to make. So I thought it'd do well, but not well enough to get the top 15. I had also Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I did think of Warcraft, but again, it was one that I didn't know. Like, could it be great? Could it also be a huge flop? Similar with something like Ben-Hur that's coming out. Mm-hmm. Is that something that I could kind of do well? Because it's along those same lines. But then I thought of something like, X's Gods and Kings, and that floundered. The next Insurgent movie, I guess none of them have done super, super well. They've done decent, but I wasn't sure if there would be...
There's more of those?
Yeah.
They're not done yet.
I think there's like 18 more.
I think there's going to be more Maze Runners films, too.
Yeah.
Because that last one wasn't long enough.
And I was trying to find another spot for another comedy, and I thought maybe it would be Neighbors 2, but...
Yeah, I thought about that one, too. I thought about Neighbors...
Gomez in it. I'm not good with that.
I thought about Neighbors 2 or Nice Guys being more of the comedic pick as well. I wasn't sure, though, which one would be better, and I thought maybe Ghostbusters would get more of the comedic audience as far as my comedy pick. But a couple kid ones, too, that we didn't talk about. Pete's Dragon, Jumanji, or like another adaptation with Tarzan. But all those, I just felt like they could be flops, too, so wasn't sure if I would feel comfortable putting those on the list. Anything else that we haven't mentioned, Dan, Amanda, that we want to get out there?
I got nothing.
All right. So those are our top 15 films that are going to make the most money. We'll have to wait and see who reigns supreme this year. We got one crown for myself and one crown for Dan. We'll see if Amanda can join the trio or if one of us roars into first place overall. But definitely some interesting stuff going on. We'll have to kind of keep track as we go throughout the year. We'll kind of look month by month at this and see how our predictions change and see what the outcomes are. But it should be fun along the way. And that means that we have another fun episode planned for you guys next week. We always kind of pair these up together, so we do the box office predictions, and then we usually follow that up with, or precede that with, our most anticipated films, which is a whole different ballgame because it has nothing to do with box office. It has more to do with actors and directors and plots and stuff like that. So we're going to be coming back at you next week with our most anticipated films of the year, and that's always a fun record. It's almost like a guide to movies in 2016. So if you're more of just a casual fan, hopefully we can add some titles to your queue that you can be looking out for in 2016. Dan, any thoughts about that already, or you want to save it for some more research?
I'll just say that a lot of my most anticipated 2015 films are also coming out in 2016. So.
Yeah, we will definitely have a little segment talking about that because that came up quite a few times in I just listened back to our most anticipated film record from last year, and it was quite interesting. I've made some preliminary runs through, and I'm only at 150 films right now, so I only have a little bit of a way to narrow down to get to what we're actually going to be talking about next week.
You're such a fucking nerd.
So, hey, it's going to be your guide to look through to pick your films, so don't be too mean to it. All right, so that's what's coming out next week. So let us know what you think is going to be number one at the box office in 2016. Is it going to be Star Wars? Is it going to be one of the comic book films, Harry Potter, or from the world of animation? But post your comments on the website. We would definitely like to hear what everybody else thinks, and we'll definitely interact with you guys there. If you want to interact with the show directly, the best way to do that is through Twitter, and the Twitter handle is @CinemaGeekcast. If you want to start a conversation with one of us individually, you can do that too. My Twitter is Optimus Solo. Dan, what's yours?
I am @MovieRevolt.
And Amanda?
Heart Candy Mandy, eyes, no eyes.
But always, if you don't want to talk to us individually, you can always keep track of what's going on at the Geekcast Radio Network, whether it's Cinema Geeks or whether it's Dan's other show, Talking in Circles, or the new GCRN Awards that's coming out, or anything fun we do along the way, like our Top 100 list or whatever. And the way to keep track of what is coming out is by becoming a fan of us on Facebook, and Mike will keep you up to date on all the new things that are going to be coming out and all the buzz that we have going on about those things. So I think that's it for now. We'll check in with you next week when we look at our most anticipated films of 2016.